Friends, let's set up the camera on our VIVO X200 Ultra. To do this, open the camera, tap Accept, and allow it to use our location. Next, we have a choice between the standard zoom ratio options, regular zoom, 0.4x, 1x, 2x, and 5x. So, this is the standard option, like on all regular smartphones. Or for those who prefer using mirrorless cameras, it's definitely more convenient to use focal length. That is, this refers to the focal length in millimeters. Personally, I prefer the focal length in millimeters, so I tap here. Next point. Here, we're told that there's a new button, which is located here on the side. I'll show you now. Here's where this button is located. And here, they're telling us about how this button works on the VIVO X200 Ultra. When you press it, you can take a photo. Let's tap Next. And next, there's a really cool mode. It's the landscape and night mode. Right now, this is an amazing mode that we had on the VIVO X200 Pro, and it works incredibly well. I recommend it to everyone. Tap Accept. The next thing I recommend doing is going to Settings, and then to More Settings. And here's where it gets interesting. The first line we see is the new camera control button. Honestly, I don't use this feature at all. It's just not convenient to use with one hand. So for me, it's basically irrelevant. Although here you can see what functions it has and what you can do with it. But again, I think this is a poor solution in smartphones, whether it's from Apple or Vivo. Next, if we double press the volume down button, what will happen? I've always preferred it to just activate photo mode. So how does it work? Right now, I press back, turn off the camera, and double press down, and photo mode is activated. This is exactly where you set it up. So I recommend everyone to customize this mode for yourself. You can set it to video mode, street mode, or quick shot mode, whatever you prefer. In other words, it's a really convenient feature. Next, here again, what's more convenient for you? Personally, I'm more used to having the focal length shown in millimeters. If you've mostly used smartphones from Apple or other brands, you can set the values here accordingly. But you need to keep in mind that if you set it to zoom ratio, make sure to choose 35 millimeters or 1.5x because this phone uses a different camera and by default it shoots at 35 millimeters or 1.5x. Meanwhile, on Samsung, for example, or on the VIVO X200 Pro, the default is 24 millimeters, which is 1x. I would recommend setting it to 1 and 5x's. Well, since that is what it really is, since 1.5x's is approximately 35 millimeters. The next thing we set is the shutter sound location, and we turn on the option so that selfies are mirrored. I like this feature. After that, we leave everything else as is. All these functions are necessary. This one corrects the ultra-wide angle. Next is saving the settings. Again, I always save all these things. I also set it so that in photo mode, the camera always saves my last settings. Next, we enable HDR and the logarithmic profiles. If I'm shooting in a logarithmic profile, I want the camera to keep that setting even if it turns off, so when I turn it back on, it still shoots video in the logarithmic profile. That's why we enable this feature, just like HDR. Next is Smart Focus. By default, you can see that it's enabled. There you go. Here you can see that with 2 taps like this, the camera focuses. We leave this as is. Next is Portrait Mode. Again, this is important when we're taking selfies, so that the portrait mode settings are saved. This is important. For all men using the VIVO X200 Ultra, I recommend turning on this feature so that makeup looks less pronounced on men. And if you want to activate the mole removal mode, you can turn it on. I'm not turning it on. Next, here, if you use this smartphone in video mode, you should definitely keep these settings as they are. That is, this means enabling video noise reduction and enabling video stabilization. Also, if you, for example, use a histogram, turn it on. I mostly use the audio level to monitor that the sound is being recorded. Let's move on. Here's a feature. If you have a protective case that lets you go underwater, you can enable this. I don't use this feature. Next is Photo Smart Recommendations. It's a cool thing. It will always recommend which shooting mode is best to use at the moment. For example, if you point it at food, it will tell you to use the food mode, and it will switch to food mode. Next is the shutter. Yes, the shutter release. I always use the show hand mode, and it takes a photo. It works really well on Vivo. It's an awesome feature, works perfectly. I recommend it to everyone. Next, you can turn this mode on or off so the sky gets a bit of extra color. If you want AI processing, turn this mode on. If you don't want it, turn it off. Next, I don't activate this feature. It's not necessary. But here, I do use this thing. Again, I activate it. Next, if you don't want to get lens flares in your camera, because sometimes, of course, well, for example, the VIVO X200 Pro, the main lens would often catch flares, and it was almost impossible to deal with. So this feature really saved me. On the VIVO X200 Pro, they introduced this mode that clearly reduced flares in photos, but it didn't help at all with video. I hope the VIVO X200 Ultra won't have this problem. And here, you can activate the full focal length in live photos. I don't use this feature. And as for the street photography camera, yes, we'll leave that as is, without any changes. Next, let's move on to video settings. First, let's set the default settings. Recommend recording 4K 60 frames per second on this smartphone. Vivo does a great job with both regular video and portrait video. Be sure to enable 4K 30 frames per second on the main camera. The VIVO X200 Ultra doesn't support 4K 30 frames per second on the front camera. I hope for it, but the smartphone only has full HD. Okay, Pro mode, shoot 4K 60 frames per second. Slow MO, 4K 120 frames per second. You get amazing shots. Everything's awesome. Favorite time-lapse. The VIVO X200 Pro was my absolute favorite smartphone for shooting time-lapses. Here, I think you'll get similarly awesome time-lapses. So, let's set it to 4K 30 frames per second. Telephoto extender, 4K 60 frames per second. That's it. We've set it up here. Let's move on. Codec. If you have computers with at least decent hardware, leave it on H.265. These videos will take up less space, but you'll still be able to edit them quickly and easily on good computers. Next is the bitrate. I definitely recommend setting a high bitrate, 24 megabits per second. Next is audio tracking. For example, if you're filming a video and the person moves away, it will adjust automatically. It's a pretty cool feature. I think it's worth using. But I turn off this function because honestly, it doesn't work well on smartphones, so we disable this one. There you go. Leave auto lens switching as it is. Next is screen turn off. Keep this feature on. If you're shooting time-lapse, for example, now the screen will finally turn off. This is a super convenient thing. We'll definitely check how it works. Lock white balance. I use this feature because it's really annoying when you're filming and the white balance keeps jumping up and down however it wants. You change the frame just a little, and your white balance goes all over the place. I lock the white balance, but honestly, for different tasks and in different modes, it might make sense not to lock it and let it adjust automatically. And accordingly, make sure to turn on good stabilization when recording 120 frames per second video. That's a really important thing. Here, you can add shortcuts to the home screen. I don't do that. Here, you can check which version of the app you have. That's it. So, we've set up absolutely all the settings you need to configure on the VIVO X200 Ultra. Let's switch back to photo mode. What do these icons actually mean? The first one is the flash, and this is live photo. We can take live photos. This is an amazing feature called Super Macro. In general, Vivo makes the best smartphones when it comes to macro shooting, both macro photos and macro videos. So I definitely recommend using this macro mode. And we actually have a huge number of different focal lengths. Next up is settings. In the settings here, we can set the screen format, whether it's 1:1, 16:9. I always use 4:3 for photos. It's the standard format that's most convenient for taking pictures. Next, you can set a timer here or have it turned off 3 seconds, 5 seconds, or 10 seconds. The next thing you absolutely need to turn on is, of course, the grid. The grid helps you position your subject perfectly. It's really convenient. You can easily frame your shot and take beautiful pictures, so definitely make sure to enable the grid. I also recommend turning on the level. This is a shake reminder, so if your camera is shaking, it will let you know, and it's better not to take the shot at that moment. Next are the various effects you can adjust here, like brightness, saturation, contrast, and sharpness. You can enable these both in regular photo mode and when shooting in RAW mode. The next thing is the watermark. I turn the watermark off. I don't need this watermark, but if, for example, you want to take photos with a watermark, you can easily choose which watermark you want here. There are different presets available. For instance, it can say VIVO X200 Ultra, and it will also show the focal length, shutter speed, and all of that can be set up here. If you don't use it, just turn the watermark off. The next thing is smart focus, meaning intelligent focus. I turn it on so that the focus is mainly on the face. And here you can also activate manual focus. So sometimes you can use manual focus to precisely focus on the subject, or use auto mode. All of this is set up here. I enable HDR by default because the smartphone takes amazing HDR photos. The next thing is the basic color grading styles. I love shooting on Vivo specifically in the vivid style, which is the bright style, the coolest one. It's my favorite. On the VIVO X200 Pro, I use only this vivid style. But there's also the amazing CEIS here. That's a more natural color style, so the image will look more natural. What I like about Vivo is that they show you exactly how everything will look. Here's black and white, meaning black and white with texture. And you can also fully customize your shooting style in this personalized mode. Next, here we can enable the running person icon. This will be a super fast shot. In other words, it's an instant shot, the so-called mode that we used to have on the VIVO X200 Pro. But actually, here it is, snapshot mode is available here too. Now, in the regular photo mode, you can enable this function as well. Next, here we have a little tip showing us that if we tap this arrow, we'll activate the so-called streak mode. It's a really cool mode that can be customized very flexibly. And here too, you can take amazing shots with 5 different focal lengths. And you can actually choose the color you're interested in here as well. There are also 5 color options here. And you can customize another one for yourself, adjusting things like saturation, contrast, sharpness, and vignette. That's it. Honestly, the mode is pretty cool. In the settings here, you can set up the grid again, which you definitely should, and you can enable focus peaking. You can also, save these settings that you have. And then, there's the street photography watermark. I turn that off. I don't need that watermark. Next, you can choose the shutter style, regular, this one, that one, or Vivo. Well, you can choose this nice Vivo style. And you can also adjust different bokeh effects here. I use the standard natural bokeh with circles. It looks pretty cool. But honestly, you can customize it completely to your liking. And here you can set up, the exposure mode, center-weighted or weighted exposure mode. Again, you can adjust it to fit your own preferences and parameters. And here there are styles, preset styles right away. You can save them, switch between these styles, and get some really awesome shots. Now let's move on to the portrait section. Here, basically, almost nothing has changed except for AI visual. It's a really cool feature, works just amazingly well. You can take very creative, awesome photos, but we will definitely test this and talk about how it actually works in our videos. But I'm sure it's going to work unbelievably well. Strangely enough, this only works on the Chinese versions of the smartphone. In the global version of the VIVO X200 Pro, AI was not available. Next up is high resolution. This is an amazing mode that lets you take unbelievably cool shots, and at different focal lengths too. You activate it, take a photo, and get incredibly detailed images. The next feature is the aperture. Here, you can set the background blur. As a rule, I take all my photos at f2.8. And then you can choose what kind of lens flare you want to get in your shots. You can customize it to your liking, depending on which flare effect you prefer. I mostly use the natural option. Next is the makeup mode. If you don't want any facial correction at all, just turn this mode off. Be sure to turn off this makeup mode. If you want your makeup to be beautifully enhanced, as if your photos have already been fully retouched in Photoshop, then I recommend using the natural makeup option. If you want a really strong makeup effect, then activate the classic mode. And here, by the way, you can also very flexibly customize everything for yourself. It's an amazing feature with very flexible and really cool settings. The next mode, again, is our color profiles. I specifically recommend the vivid mode, which is the bright mode. The next thing is the different presets. There are a lot of cool presets here, and it's great that Vivo immediately shows you roughly how the effect will look at different focal lengths. If, for example, you don't want to use it, you just go here and select None. For portrait shooting, the settings here are basically the same as before. Autofocus is on, HDR is on, level is on, and the grid is on. The next amazing mode, my favorite mode, is landscape and night. I recommend everyone use it, because with this mode you can take long exposure shots. And this is the kind of beauty you'll be able to capture. There are a huge number of these different long exposure modes here, whether it's flowing water, night traffic, just a ton of options. By the way, it also shows what the exposure time is, and you can change it too, which is really convenient. I've taken a lot of photos in this mode. It's one of my favorite modes on Vivo smartphones. The next feature is time-lapse. Once again, the time-lapse you get here are just insanely cool. You can immediately see that it's set to 4K at 30 FPS. The only thing is, here you can turn off stabilization. I mostly shoot time-lapse with a tripod, so I always turn off the stabilization. If you leave stabilization on, your image will get heavily cropped. And here you can set the interval at which each photo will be taken, or just leave it in automatic mode, in which case the camera will adjust everything itself. You can also fine-tune things here, like ISO, shutter speed, white balance, exposure mode, and of course, adjust the exposure itself. Also, friends, in this mode there's an amazing feature that you can access from here. It's the miniature effect. I really love this mode. Thanks to it, you can choose focus peaking, as if you were using a tilt lens. This is my favorite mode. I've taken a lot of photos using this miniature mode, and I really enjoyed it. There's also an astrophotography mode here. You can take cool shots, even astro portraits with stars in the background, and overall it works pretty well. There's also Art Moon. I didn't really like this mode, although I guess you could come up with some interesting ways to photograph the moon, like placing it creatively in your picture. Guys, this is a beautiful moon. So thanks to this mode, if we activate it, we can get some really awesome shots of the moon itself. It's a cool feature, works great. Also, this mode has moved over here. We have a 50 megapixel high resolution option, or 200 megapixels. Or, basically, we can just turn it off. By the way, this feature is really cool. It's the CIS perspective. It lets you take awesome photos, and it will immediately show you when you're photographing buildings. This thing is super helpful. Again, we use it too. Let's move on. This is the quick shot mode, meaning you can take a fast photo when there's some quick movement in the frame. Again, you can take really cool shots and get great frames, but you can see that you won't be able to use the ultra-wide lens in this mode. And here, you can also adjust all these settings. You can also shoot live photos here. This is what a live photo looks like. Well, they basically look standard. You can just pause it, grab a frame like this, and save it. There you go. Next, let's move on. This mode is the video mode. Here, this is the shutter speed, and here we have stabilization, ultra stabilization. If you activate this ultra stabilization mode, you get super stabilized video, but the image is cropped down to 2.8K. But again, the footage is very stable. If you're running, doing some action, or riding a bike or motorcycle, definitely turn on ultra stabilization, then you'll get really stable shots. Next, Dolby Vision really boosts the dynamic range, and you get some awesome footage. There you go, and here in the settings, you can set a logarithmic profile, so when we turn on the logarithmic profile, the image looks desaturated, and then you can easily color grade it later. By the way, it even says right here that you can download the LUT from this spot. And you can also adjust the brightness here if you want, or you can just turn this feature off. And you can also use a teleprompter here and run the text like this. You can read the text, record with the front camera, and read directly from the screen. Again, it's a really convenient feature, but if you don't need it, just turn it off. That's it. And by the way, you can also connect a Bluetooth microphone here. We checked and tested it with a Bluetooth mic, and honestly, it works pretty well. And here, you can choose either a 16:9 aspect ratio or go for wide-angle shooting. When we tap on portrait video, it switches to portrait video mode. It's an amazing mode. The VIVO X200 Pro shot incredible portrait videos. I recommend this mode to everyone. It's really awesome, and you can shoot at any focal length. So, what do we have here? First of all, we can adjust the bokeh, meaning we can control the background blur. I usually set it to 2.8. That's enough bokeh for me. You can also even apply classic makeup, or just go without any makeup. There you go. And here you can completely customize this whole thing to suit yourself, set the skin tone, set the whiteness. That's it. I personally don't use these features much, but you can tweak them to suit yourself. And here is color correction. There are different color shooting options here. Now, in the More mode. Here, first of all, you can take panoramas. I don't really use this mode much. Next is Ultra HD documents. You can photograph documents. Everything works great. No problems at all. Slow MO, slow motion shooting. This smartphone can shoot 4K at 120 frames per second and still get really good footage. You can also do 1080p, meaning full HD at 240 or 120 frames per second. Let's move on. This is a scene. Guys, in scene mode, when shooting video, you can zoom in up to 30x, while in regular video mode, you can only zoom in up to 20x. You need to keep that in mind. So, if you want to zoom in even further, just switch to scene mode and easily zoom up to 30x. The settings here are basically the same. Next up is time-lapse. Time-lapse, essentially, is the same mode we had in landscape mode. So here, I think this feature is unnecessary. It's not needed. The Pro mode is an amazing mode that lets the camera take absolutely stunning shots in RAW, meaning you get unprocessed images. And, accordingly, I highly recommend taking these RAW shots, especially in high resolution. And now I see that even in high resolution, we have the ability to take ultra-wide shots, whereas on the VIVO X200 Pro, we didn't have this option. This is an awesome feature. For those who don't like how VIVO processes images, I recommend everyone take photos in Pro mode and use SRAW high resolution. That way, you'll definitely get some really amazing shots. And, of course, here you can once again adjust the look, set the color profile, and tweak all these different parameters to your liking. This is the underwater mode. I don't use it. Next is my favorite mode, HUD. On the VIVO X200 Pro, this was a really cool mode. I'm sure it'll be pretty much the same here. There are a lot of beautiful, fun, and interesting effects here. You can adjust the settings and take absolutely stunning food photos. And, of course, here you can also adjust the aperture to get background blur in this food mode. The next feature is scanning various documents or QR codes. This is mainly done using this particular app. Since I don't have the lenses right now, when you connect this new telephoto extender, you need to activate this mode. You tap Control, it connects, and then you can shoot with different focal lengths, all the way up to 1600 millimeters. That's really awesome, of course. I don't have that thing yet, so I won't be able to try it. The Supermoon mode has now moved to the landscape mode, so we can just tap there and it'll take us straight to it. Alright. And the last mode is high resolution. Again, it says that high resolution has now moved here to landscape and night. That's it, guys, so we've now gone through all the settings completely. Yeah, the only thing I recommend is customizing this, and for example, I would definitely add the Pro mode here. That's my favorite mode, the one I use all the time. I put it next to photo, because I use this mode constantly. Maybe even like this. I don't use the others as often, so I'll just leave them as they are. In Pro mode, you can see right now that the audio track is running, everything's good, everything is showing up. I can see that the sound is being recorded. And here, you can also set it to log shooting. You can turn on focus peaking so you can see where the focus is. There you go. And here, basically, you can also connect a microphone and, work using the mic. Well, friends, so we set up absolutely all the settings on our camera and went through all the modes. I showed you the main settings here and which ones you need to turn on. If this video was helpful for you, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and let me know in the comments what you think about the settings on the VIVO X200 Ultra. Was everything clear, or do you need me to explain anything else? And that's it, bye bye everyone.